So this is just this idea where I'm taking various images and cutting out facial features and maybe other body parts like hands and arms and legs and assembling them into categories and then creating variations by having multiple versions of the different categories grouped together. So I like to do this because it's a good alternative to actually drawing. If you're not really into drawing, you can create this cutout style of character and then have a number of variations available. What I basically do is I just do a search for what I want, like I'll search for eyes, and you'll find that there's websites that sometimes just have eye parts, nose parts of celebrities to give you this big selection to choose from. So just doing a search for eyes of celebrities, I got all these eyes that I can play with. And what I generally do is I just find something I like and then do a screen grab. So I like to do Shift Control Command 4 on a Mac. You can do the similar thing on a Windows machine. I think it's with the Windows key, it's Shift Windows. I forget what it actually is, but there is a similar thing where I can do a screen grab, but I'm copying it to the clipboard and then I can paste it in my document. So in Photoshop, I create these groups. You click on the little folder, it creates a group. You can also go into the menu up here and say new group. And then inside the group, that group will have a name, by the way. So I make sure I name my groups based on the category. But inside the group, I'll create a new layer. So I'll go to the menu up here and say new layer, and then I'll paste that thing that I found. So here's an eye, and I like how this eye is actually looking off into a different direction and not straight at me. So here I will use Command T to transform, scale it up. And then what I like to do to get like a paper cutout effect is to use the object selection tool. And I'm just moving some things out of the way here. So in the toolbar, there's this relatively new object selection tool. And I just select that tool and I left click drag over the thing I want to select, like this eyeball. And many times it will not give you a perfect selection. But for the paper cutout type of effect, that's fine. I don't necessarily want a perfect selection. It looks like it was ripped out of a magazine when it's not perfect. So then what I do is I mask it out. So I have my selection, I go to the layers, the little mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette, and I just mask that out. And then I like to add a little stroke around this of 1 pixel and maybe a slight drop shadow as well using layer effects. So I go into the layer effects down here and I'll pick stroke, add a little bit of stroke, set it to 1 pixel outside, and then a little drop shadow, hit OK. And that gives me like a rip kind of look. And then sometimes I like to play with this type of texture that looks like a newspaper. So here I have this hat for the character. So let's say I have a bunch of hats. So to get that effect, I will go into filter and first select the layer, of course, that I want to affect. And I'll go into filter gallery, and there's a halftone effect in filter gallery. You find it under sketch, and here is the halftone. It's called Halftone Pattern. And playing with the size and the contrast gives you this kind of newspaper print type pattern, which I like. So it applies it. And then sometimes I'll add some noise. So I'll go back into filter, go to noise, add a little bit of noise, makes it more like it has a rough paper texture. And then sometimes you can add some difference clouds. So what you do is you create a new layer above and you fill it with a color. So I'll fill it with white. I can hit Command Delete and fill it with the background color. Command Delete on a Mac will fill it with whatever color you have for the background. So the swatches here, I have a foreground, I have a background, the background's white, so it fills it with white. And you need to have the layer filled with some sort of color for difference clouds to work. So now I'll go into render, I'll go into filter, I'll go into render, I'll select difference clouds. Then I will scale up the cloud. So I hit Command T and I drag a corner. I just scale up that cloud noise. And then I will add mesotynt pixelation to it. So you go to pixelate under filter and I just use this default of find dots, hit OK. So it just adds a little bit more noise to the clouds. And then I will use a blend mode, and the blend mode in layers is right where you see the word normal. You click on that, you get a pop-up menu, and I will use overlay and then just lower the opacity. So it just adds a little bit of variation to the noise. So this is what it is with this render cloud mezzotint layer, and it's just very subtle. I only want to apply the cloud noise to the hat. So what you can do, right now it's being applied to everything, all the layers below, but to have it just affect the hat, you can option click between layers or alt click on a PC, and you get this box with a downward pointing arrow, and then you click right in between the layer above and the layer below, and that way the cloud is not only affecting the hat layer. And the final thing you can play with is exposure. So you can go into your adjustments here, your adjustment layers, and play with, and here you can play with exposure, and in the properties that you have, you can adjust this exposure. And again, if you click on the point where the top layer and the bottom layer touch, that intersection between the two layers, option click, you can make sure that exposure is only applied to the hat itself. This is a nice way to lighten or darken that effect. And then finally, I will also add to this the same filter effect that I added to the eye for the cutout. So add a little stroke and a drop shadow. Since I already have the filter effect here on this eyeball, I can right click on it, copy it. So it's copying the filter effect, or you could say it's copying the layer style, which is basically the combined filter effects of stroke and drop shadow. Then I can go into the hat layer, I can right click there, and I can paste the layer style. Now that has just like a subtle pixel outline to help you see a little bit better. So I would just build this up. I would add more eyeballs, different mouths and eyes. I have a mouth here. I will go into the mouse folder, and again I will add that filter effect to that as well. So I'll right click. It's already been copied, so I can paste it, so it just sticks out a little bit more. So I like that. Maybe add it to this eyeball too. You don't have to rip, give the ripped effect for every element. Maybe just keep some of the rectangles as well. So this is a way to create an interesting collage type character using found images, and it can be a nice alternative to drawing something to give a different type of photo collage look.